Joined by Robert Trujillo from Metallica. First of all, thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
We got to start with last night because that was an amazing show. What did you think of the Canadian crowd that poured into the Opera House for you guys last night?
I thought it was great. It's always fun to play these smaller venues. The sound actually for me was really great. I felt there was enough low end and it felt tight, and it's great just to interact with the crowd and to feel their energy and play the new songs for them as well.
You pack that many people into a place like that, and a band with a reputation for being as loud as you guys can be. It was sort of like, how many earplugs am I going to get to go through in one night here? But it was, you guys sounded crisp as any arena show I've ever seen you guys in.
Some of these older venues like that, there's kind of an energy there. The stage, it was wood, which is always nice, so there's a certain resonance, and like you said, when the crowd's in there, it kind of fills out in a way. It sort of it creates a sound barrier or something. It somehow helps filter out certain tones and everything, and then so the balance was really right. You know what I mean? You never know what you're going to get. In London, when we played House of Ands, it was an amazing show. Great energy again, but the sound was wood but hollow. So I remember James was just like, man, this is the coolest place with the shittiest, if I can say that,
that's fine,
the crappiest sound, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like, so it was a bit of a nightmare for him on the sonic level, but last night, sonically, it was like, this is great. You can feel the subs, you can feel the bass the right way. It's not overdone, but at the same time, you can hear the highs and the mids, and the balance was good. So we had a good time.
You could fill any building in the world. We just opened a brand new football stadium in Regina. You guys could fill it tomorrow, not a problem. But it's still got to be cool to come and play a show in a 900-seat venue like the Opera House.
Yeah, no, again, it's great. Playing small shows, playing, stadiums, it's all great. We're blessed. We always appreciate our fans and what we're able to do and where we're able to play around the world. We've had the good fortune of experiencing a lot of new territories, especially in the last few years. We've even played for like penguins in Antarctica, and that's something that is so special, and we're fortunate to be able to experience that.
For the show last night, people hours before the doors were even open were lined up outside the venue and around the corner. That's dedication from your fans to get in to see a show like that. What does it mean to you guys to see that kind of energy before you've even stepped foot on a stage from a crowd?
It's always nice to see. When you pull up to a gig and you see a line around the block, it's like, well, I guess we're still relevant, you know what I mean? I guess people still care, and that's nice. When you have a new album and it's been a while, you always wonder, what's the reception going to be like? Fortunately for us, we really enjoy what we do. We love being creative and challenging ourselves. So it's just sort of icing on the cake, to come to Toronto and know that there's a lot of passion here. We were in Central America recently, and that was also great because you go into a place you don't go to very often, and what's it going to be? You know what I mean? It's like, and you can feel the passion, you can see it, and it's all, great and positive. And so it's always nice to see that, The scary thing is when you don't know what it's going to be, and then it turns into that Spinal Tap moment where there's like 5 people, and you're like, oh man. Ooh.
Okay, but let's be honest here. When's the last time you played to 5 people, other than maybe the Penguin show?
Oh man, yeah, exactly. It's been a while, I think there was a time, I had a band called the Infectious Grooves back in the early 90s, and we were really good, and we had a bunch of sold out shows on the West Coast, but then somehow we ended up in Arizona, and it was Phoenix, and it was the weirdest thing because we'd been there before, and they were sold out, and we rolled up, and this is before internet and all this stuff, and basically the venue had not promoted the gig, so we rolled up into like what would be equivalent to a bar and grill with volleyball courts and sand and all this, and we set up, and then we come to realize that the show hadn't really been advertised. So people that I knew who lived in Phoenix were like, you know, and they're like heavy metal heads or alternative rock, and they love music. We didn't know that you were in town. You better talk to your promoter. And there was, okay, you know, it wasn't 5 people, but maybe there was like 30 people.
Right.
And that was like, wow, what's going on here? You know, it kind of messed with your head a little bit. And that happened a couple times on that tour. So at least for me at the time, I knew that it was something that was sort of out of our hands, and it wasn't our fault necessarily. But it doesn't feel good when it happens.
Now we're talking about like fan dedication, and you mentioned the new album. You guys played Atlas Rise, you played Moth and a Flame, and of course you played Hardwired last night at the Opera House. This album has been out maybe a week and change by the time people are seeing or hearing this interview. They knew all the words. They were screaming all the words from all the new stuff back at you guys. How did that feel? I mean, you said it before, like, oh, it's cool, we're relevant again, but I mean, these fans are so dedicated that they know all the words to the stuff you just put out.
You know, Metallica lyrics can be what you want them to be. You know, they're open for interpretation. It's always nice to see the smiles on their faces, and they're owning those words, you know, because whatever they're pulling from them, they believe, and that's the goal, you know. It's like, hey, you know, take from them what you want as long as it's positive. I remember with Death Magnetic, I had to do a special interview where I had to sort of dissect each song in what my interpretation was in the lyrics. So I did a bit of homework and I spent some time on it, and then I talked to James about it before I did the interview. I go, so what, you know, this is what I'm getting from this song. And I'm like, you know, and I wanted him to be able to say, well, actually it's this. And he was like, that's cool, yeah, that's cool, yeah, okay, yeah, you know, and then I realized that it didn't, I didn't have to go through every song with him, because it was always going to be, that's fine, that's cool, whatever. It's open to interpretation. It's, if that's what you think it is, then that's what it should be. And I feel that when you see those fans up at the front and they're reciting those lyrics and they have that look on their face, like, again, they're owning it, and it's something that they're really, really proud of, I believe that they're pulling away something positive from that. In this day and age, you know, where you need positive energy and you need to have that in your system, you know, that means Metallica is doing something right. You know, we're all very different individuals. We're not the same, you know, and we care about each other, and we're brothers, you know. We love each other like brothers. And creatively, we do what we do, but we're all very different. And that's why we stay away from politics and religion and all those things, because, you know, you got a guy from, you know, Lars from Denmark, and, you know, James grew up in a certain situation, environment. Kurt grew up completely, you know, we're all different. But we come together, we make music, and our goal is to make people happy and hopefully get some positive out of the experience in their journey with Metallica.
Have you ever heard a fan's interpretation of the lyrics that was kind of out there? Like, have you ever heard a weird interpretation of a Metallica song where you're just like, how did you get that?
Well, yeah, you always do. I mean, sometimes people are adamant about a certain song being about, you know, that's about drugs, that's about, or that's about, you know, that's about God, or that's about this. And it's like, okay, you know, I could see that, yeah, you know. I think some of the strange interpretations is like, okay, for instance, there are songs that we can't play in China, you know what I mean? And that's interesting, because whatever they're interpreting the lyric for a particular song would not allow maybe the song to be played live. Meanwhile, you know, like Ride the Lightning, for instance, has nothing to do with what they're probably thinking it has to do with.
Metallica's not writing songs about overthrowing the Chinese government?
No, never. We love our fans in China, but we really do. I mean, we've been there, and so it's interesting that you know, that when you get other, you know, sort of ideas, and and then I would call it a misconception, you know what I mean? Positive, you know. It's like the whole thing with Black Sabbath, you know. Black Sabbath's lyrics, you know, people call them, have called them, you know, whatever, Satanists. Couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, Geezer, who writes the lyrics, is a very special human being who is probably one of the most, in a lot of ways, very religious individuals that you would know. I mean, he's very well read in religion. He's very smart, and it's more about good versus evil, you know. So it's not celebrating the devil in terms of, you know, devil is cool and we're celebrating this. It's more about good versus evil, you know. Whatever, Star Wars, you know, I mean, it's like, you know.
I'd listen to a Black Sabbath record about Star Wars, to be honest, if they just went full on with references and everything.
And they could, you know, they could. I mean, that's the thing, again, open for interpretation. But, you know, as a kid, you know, I remember with my friends listening to the song Black Sabbath, and we'd have the lights off and candles, and you look at the album covers, and it was really easy to freak yourself out, you know, in the same way if you went to a horror movie. But then you really dissect the lyrics, and it's like, hey, the message is like, you know, just be careful, you know, stay away from the evil, you know. So it's almost like more preaching positive word.
You have been with some pretty major bands, you know, Metallica included, for about 30 years now. But do you still get that sort of that excitement, that anticipation when a new album is about to come out, like leading up to Hardwired? Did you still have that sort of butterfly feeling of like, I can't wait for the people to get this and I hope they like it?
Yeah, I mean, you always do, especially when you really enjoy what you did, what you recorded, and how it sounds. With our producer, Greg Fiddleman, it was really a joy to work with him and to try different things and experiment. You're taking this journey together, and it seems long-winded at the time, you know, but then when it's all over, and you never realize that someday it's going to be over, but when it is over, and then you embrace that there's success with it, you know, and people actually are enjoying it, it is gratifying. You know, again, it takes a long time for Metallica to make records, and it's a bit of a process, and this one took 8 years. I mean, it wasn't like we worked on the album for 8 years, you know, we really focused it on the last couple of years, but, you know, I'm proud of the bass sound and the drums, and I'm really proud of James's vocals and the production, and everything just really sits well and fits together. I feel, and this is my opinion, and I've heard it from other people, even last night we're talking about it at the party with some of the local people, and this is really one of the best Metallica sounding albums sonically ever, and that really comes a lot from, I mean, of course, how we're playing, but also just our producer and his commitment to sound and really getting in there and being a part of every experience in recording this thing. Not kind of phoning it in, not, you know, okay, it's just bass tracks, you don't need me, the assistant will do it. I've been in those situations. Assistant engineer can cover this or whatever. No, it was like, has to be there, has to be this. There's a lot involved when you've got that much responsibility and attention to detail. So this is exciting times, because it's really, in a lot of ways for me, you know, my first creative experience with Metallica was Death Magnetic. And this is sort of the second step to that. And I feel I'm already inspired for the next step, you know what I mean? I'm coming up with ideas already, because it feels good, it feels right and exciting, and it's exciting to have a producer like Greg Fiddleman on board with us now.
Well, it's exciting to hear you say that, like you're already thinking ahead to the future, because I'm going to go ahead and guess maybe that means it's not going to be 8 years till the next one.
No. I personally won't let it be 8 years. You know, with Death Magnetic, between Saint Anger and Death Magnetic, we actually had, if I'm not mistaken, 5 kids born. And of course, that would allow things to take time. And then with this 8-year cycle, we had done a film called Through the Never. We made an album with Lou Reed, which was very important and special to us. But we also did some interesting tour cycles where we played like the Black Album in its entirety. We actually played this song called Frayed Ends of Sanity last summer off the Justice album, which seemed like an impossible task for the longest time. And we hit it, we attacked it. So where we're at our age, in our careers, I like the fact that we are challenging ourselves. And to me, that makes for a better album. And all the complaints about, oh, it took so long, you know, we've been waiting, finally, it's like, it did take a long time, but at least we got this and this and this done, got it out of our system, and that has made this album, I feel, better and special. And now, yeah, you know, you don't have to wait so long, you know? We're getting better.
Well, I mean, I think with the reaction that you guys are getting, and I mean, #1 in so many countries, it's safe to say it was worth the wait. It's got to be exciting to see with some of the big pop albums that are coming out, and the big country albums that are coming out. It's for me as a rock radio guy, it is really cool to see a rock album sitting at #1 on those charts.
Yeah, it's almost surreal, you know. Rock is in an interesting place right now, you know. Hopefully the youth will. Hopefully there's gonna be a movement. You know, I noticed that in some of the schools of rock in the state, there's a lot more younger kids coming in and playing instruments, real instruments, and hopefully that continues because it's the youth that's going to create the movement that's going to fill the stadiums and the concert halls and do what Metallica's been able to do or what Black Sabbath's been able to do. We don't want this art to sort of just die off, you know. We want to keep going and progress and keep it alive, and it's possible, you know. We can do it, but with technology now and people being able to write songs at the press of a button, you know, it's a little bit of a challenge because people get lazy, and you know, when you're playing your instrument, you got to put in the time and the energy. So hopefully we're inspiring the young generation to step up.
Is there anybody in that young generation that you would point to and say, is there anybody on the up, I guess, that you're listening to right now that you're like, that's a band with a lot of potential?
You know, Gojira's a great band, of course. They're younger than us. There's a lot of cool bands that are doing cool things, and they're being creative, and they're on the rise and making things happen. But it's gonna go beyond that. It has to come from let's look at my son. He's 12. You know, Ty, and he's got a band, and they're ripping. I mean, they've already opened for the Chili Peppers, and you know, and for me, that is a beautiful thing because that is the movement. Those are the kids that are going to make the difference ultimately. Not so much the 30-year-olds, you know, or whatever, the 40, 30-year-olds. It's going to be the teenagers, these young, like he's not even a teenager yet, but that generation, they are going to need to all step up and make things happen because I'm worried about what's going to happen, you know, 10 years, 15 years from now, 20 years from now. Just, you know, where's this all going?
Now, I know better through a number of interviews than to ask a musician for their favorite song on the album because the answer is the same every single time. I love them all. They're all great. But from a live performance standpoint, is there a song on Hardwired to Self-Destruct that you are really looking forward, like something that you can really eat up and enjoy playing at the upcoming tour shows?
Yeah, I mean, it might be an obvious choice because I've heard a lot of the fans like it, but there's a song called Spit Out the Bone, which I think is just, it's like getting in a fast race car and just driving the streets of Toronto or wherever, you know, and just creating havoc and surviving. And that's kind of, in a way, to me, how that song was written and how it exists, and it's turned into this really radical piece of art. And I look forward to playing it because I feel that there's a strange connection to it, you know, in its existence and how it's sort of evolved. So I look forward to playing that one, and it's definitely one of my favorite songs. Moth and the Flame is great, you know, of course, and Hardwired and the songs that we are playing now. There's a certain, like the groove is there. That's the thing about all these songs. And I think the main ingredient is there is a groove thing happening now that is special. And no matter if it's a fast song or more of a kind of a medium pace or whatever, There's just something that feels really good about the groove and this stuff. But I'd say Spit Up the Moon because of the challenge factor.
It has been 14 years since you joined Metallica. Does it still feel new and fresh every day?
It's exciting every year that we're doing something because I feel personally that we are growing, and you know, again, Death Magnetic being my first collaborative creative experience with the band, and you know, Hardwired was really centered around James's riffs, a lot of his ideas, and my role is to do the best I can, whether it's as a bassist, as a bass player, and writing what I can to support the ideas, whether they're his ideas or Kirk's ideas. But I feel Hardwired is great because it needed to be this way. But again, I'm looking beyond that now. I can't help it. It's like one of those things you can't turn off is creativity. And when it says, hello, I'm here, you're like, okay, you know, and you start coming up with ideas, and maybe you'll burn out in a month and then you won't have anything for 6 months, you know. You kind of got to go with it. But after 14 years, you know, it's nice to see that there's, you know, there's excitement and there's even some relevance that seems to be developing. You see a lot of young fans, older fans are still there, and it seems like it's a good time to be in this band, and hopefully the momentum carries on, and that really depends on us and being inspired and staying with that energy. So it doesn't feel like it's fading, it feels like it's kind of brewing, so that's good.
You guys are looking at going, obviously, the big tour in the summer of 2017.
Yeah.
Just, I know you probably don't specifically deal in booking or tour routing or anything like that, but if you just, for me, just remember Saskatchewan.
Okay.
And if you happen to land anywhere in the province, you know, Regina, Saskatoon, Estevan, wherever, we'd be happy to have you. So, thank you very much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Right on.